Hello everyone and welcome back to Like and Hood Reads. I'm coming at you with a new mid-year freakout tag. This is a tag that I've been doing every year since I started this channel, so I really hated to miss it. I know I haven't been posting much, but I figured that a mid-year freakout tag was as good an update as any. To be honest, I haven't been reading this year as much as I would like. A little bit of a slump, a little bit of just being busy, a little bit of being lazy. But all that aside, I have managed to read a little over 25 books this year so far. I doubt I'm going to make my goal of 90 in December, but we'll just see how the year goes because there's still a lot of exciting new releases coming out, not to mention a huge TBR pile that I always need to get through. So without further ado, I'm going to jump into the mid-year freakout tag for 2023. There are 13 questions. Question number 1. What is the best book that you've read so far this year? This question was a no-brainer for me, pretty easy. It was A Day of Fallen Night by Samantha Shannon. This is, of course, the prequel second book in Samantha Shannon's Roots of Chaos series, the follow-up to Priory of the Orange Tree, which totally blew my mind back in like 2020 or 2019 when it first came out. Highly anticipated, and it did not disappoint. I loved it. It's quite possible that I loved A Day of Fallen Night more than I liked The Priory of the Orange Tree, maybe because of the anticipation, maybe because of the richness of a world already having been set up a little bit for me. It's hard to explain really why I would choose one over the other because they're both so fantastic and they're both just giving me so much of what I want out of an epic fantasy. The whole series is great. The second book, A Day of Fallen Night, is absolutely fantastic, and I would have to say without a doubt it's the best book I've read so far this year. This next question I feel like always trips me up a little bit. It's what's the best sequel that you've read so far this year? I feel like sequel's a little broad. It could be narrowed down to just be book twos in a series, like the second book in a series, or it could just be any book that is in a series that's not the first book, maybe something like that. But I always have a hard time choosing. Again, not this year. Samantha Shannon has made it easy. Best prequel I've read this year is probably going to be A Day of Fallen Night, no contest. Does it technically count as a sequel since it takes place before the events of the first book? I would call it a prequel personally myself. So if we're going to split hairs and you don't feel like A Day of Fallen Night is technically a sequel, I'll say that The Faithless by C.L. Clarke, which is the second book in the Magic of the Lost series, the follow-up to The Unbroken, that would have to be my second pick for the best sequel of this year so far. Question number 3, what is a new release that you've been looking forward to and that you want to read but have not gotten to yet? So, of course, I take this to mean a book that's come out in 2023 that's been sort of anticipated by me that I haven't yet gotten to read. First is going to be Some Desperate Glory, which I believe is by Emily Tesh. That is a sci-fi sort of space opera. I know that it has a queer main character, so I've been pretty excited about that. I have the hardback on my shelf because I did pre-order it, and I'm hoping to get to it pretty much any day now. Also looking for The Archive Undying. The cover is just absolutely amazing. I don't really remember a lot of the details of the description because I looked at it way back when I was making an anticipated releases video at the end of last year. But I just know that I was super excited for this one, that the cover is absolutely incredible, and I can't wait to get my hands on it. Of course, I'm looking forward to He Who Drowns the World, which is the follow-up to Shelley Chen's She Who Became the Sun. Definitely looking forward to that one. The cover is stunning, and I believe it's going to focus more so on that almost secondary POV character from the first book who kind of won me over in that first book and was stealing a little bit of the spotlight from the main protagonist. That one comes out in August. I've already pre-ordered it, so looking forward to that one. And lastly, even though it's a little farther out, I want to mention the Threads of Power book that's coming out from E.B. Schwab. This is, of course, a follow-up to her Shades of Magic trilogy, which I am a huge fan of. It's my favorite thing that she's written, and I've been waiting to get back into that world since I first read it. So I'm very excited. She's been teasing us for a long time that there was going to be more material in this world, and I can't wait to see what she's done with it. I think Threads of Power comes out in like November or something. I'm extremely excited about it. It's probably my most anticipated new release of the year. Question number 4 sort of builds on that. What are your most anticipated releases for the second half of the year, July through December? I'm just going to start naming some off. Let's see. Iris Kelly Doesn't Date, Cleat Cute, Devil's Gun by Kat Rambo, looking forward to The Archive Undying, looking forward to that Threads of Power book, of course, looking forward to He Who Drowns the World, The Power Unbound, Godly Heathens. The list goes on and on pretty much, but these are my top priorities, even though I'm not supposed to be buying new books. Question number 5, what is your biggest disappointment so far this year? This question was a little bit difficult for me because, like I said, I've been in a reading slump. There have been some books this year that I read that I just didn't click with, didn't make me feel much, were just a little bit forgettable. But I have to say that Nine Fox Gambit is going to be the one to take up this number 5 spot. I did not finish Nine Fox Gambit. I had to DNF it. I don't know exactly when I DNF'd it, but I read most of it, like a lot of it, on audiobook. I probably stopped somewhere around 60 or 70%. I have been looking forward to Nine Fox Gambit for a long time. It had been on my kind of vague TBR for years, probably, when I finally decided to pick it up over on Scribd on audiobook. And I just could not get into it. Pretty much every step of the way, I've just felt kind of isolated from the writing, isolated from the main character's POV. I didn't have a good sense of what the world looked like visually. Like, I was understanding the mechanics of it and like what was going on, but I just had a hard time picturing it in my head and just connecting with it or caring about it at all. So I slugged through for a while, like I said, maybe 60 or 70%. Before finally, I just had to call it quits. I would say that's probably the most disappointing read of the year, just because I was looking forward to this series for so long, and now that's just out the window. Question number 6, biggest surprise of the year so far. This is without a doubt going to go to Miss Memory Lane by Colton Hayes. This is a memoir by an actor, the actor from Teen Wolf who played Jackson. I kind of picked this up on Scribd, not really expecting much. I don't read very much nonfiction in general. I don't read very many memoirs, especially. So this is already sort of a rare occurrence, but I read it and I absolutely loved it. I didn't know much about Colton Hayes, in general, and so it was informative, but it was also very emotional, and it was just a good reading experience for me. So, favorite new author, there were a couple of people that I could put here. I've, checked out some new authors this year that I liked. It's hard to say a favorite, because, there isn't anyone that's blown my mind this year that's just, I've devoured all of their work or anything like that. You're always hoping for a new author like that, but some of the authors I've been enjoying this year would be C.L. Polk. I've been reading the Witchmark series from them. I would also say Lee Mandello, who wrote Feed the Silence, and also Summer Suns, which I read last year. I'm really enjoying their writing, especially Feed the Silence was the most recent one I read just last month. I would also just say maybe an honorary mention to C.E. McGill. They wrote a new book this year as a debut, I believe, called Our Hideous Progeny. It was a kind of loose Frankenstein retelling or Frankenstein kind of spinoff. The Frankenstein element wasn't as big as you might have expected, and it wasn't what made me love the book either. I was just really floored by it. I thought that she did a great job telling that story, and I really enjoyed the book. So even though I've only read that one book by them, I would say that there's someone that I'm looking out for in the future. That's C.E. McGill. Question number 8 is, who is your newest fictional crush? And I always struggle with this one because it's hard for me to differentiate fictional crush from favorite character, which is the next question, number 9. So I'm just going to kind of combine those because I don't like getting into it. Don't really have much of a fictional crush, but question number 9, who is my favorite new character this year, is without a doubt going to go to Glorian Shieldheart, who is from A Day of Fallen Night. She is one of the POV characters in A Day of Fallen Night, and she is one of the queens in that world. And the character development that she goes through in that book is just absolutely fantastic. There was already a sense of sort of anticipation because of her kind of historical context in the Priory of the Orange Tree. So she was just sort of this figure that you thought maybe you knew everything about, who was built up to be this amazing, queen in Priory of an Orange Tree. And then you get to A Day of Fallen Night and you meet this, young teenage girl who has no idea what's going on, no idea what to do, no idea how to be a good queen. All she wants to do is be good at this thing that she's been told she's destined to be her entire life. I just felt like her journey and like her inner emotional life was the most fascinating to me in that book, which is really saying something because it's full of deeply complex characters that Shannon just spends a whole lot of time getting to know. So in a book full of amazing characters, I gotta go with Glorian Shieldheart. She just had some really incredible moments, and when I think about that book, I think about her, and I think about that book all the time. So that's what we're going with for number 8 and 9. She's my newest favorite character and maybe a little bit my favorite crush. Question number 10, which book made you cry? So I've been over this in previous Mid-Year Freakout Tag videos. Books don't really make me cry very often. The last time that happened, I was in the 8th grade. It was 2008, and I remember it vividly. However, I would say the book that got the closest, or the book that made me like the most emotional this year, is without a doubt going to be Miss Memory Lane by Colton Hayes. Again, just a memoir that took me by surprise. I had some really vulnerable moments, and it was hard not to feel something at the end of it. 11, which book made you happy this year? This one might be sort of a strange choice for anyone that's read it and knows what it's about, but I'm gonna go with The Wolves, which is actually a play. It's actually a play that I first read back in, I believe, 2020, when I just randomly picked it up at a bookstore because I pretty much can't resist anything that might have to do with wolves or werewolves. The truth is that this play doesn't have anything to do with wolves. It's about a high school girls soccer team whose mascot, is the wolves. They are the wolves. And it's fantastic. So what I ended up rereading it this year because it was being put on here in my town, my city. It's a very small play. It's not like overly famous, and so I had never dreamed that I would actually get to see it on stage, and it was very exciting to have it come to my city and to actually get to see it performed in such a unique way over at Macon Little Theater. I got to go with my mom. We sat backstage for a Q&A with the cast and the director and the screenwriter afterwards, and it was such a great experience overall. I reread this book and loved it all the more for having seen it on the play. It's a fantastic play, and it just made me happy. The whole thing, going with my mom, getting to see it here in Macon, getting to meet the actors and talk with them about what the story meant to them, what the characters meant to them. It was all a fantastic experience that made me very happy. So that goes to number 10 for sure. What is the most beautiful book that you've read this year so far? That you've bought or been given this year so far? Question number 11. That's without a doubt gonna go to the Roots of Chaos series set that I got from the Broken Binding. This is the most money that I've ever spent on a single book purchase. It's 2 books technically, but it's the most money I've ever spent on, say, a single series, and it's totally worth it. So if you don't know what the Broken Binding is, these are their editions of Priory of the Orange Tree and A Day of Fallen Night. I'm super happy with my purchase. At the end of the video, I'm going to put a little unboxing clip from when I opened them, and you can see pictures of more details either on Twitter from the Broken Binding, or I have some stuff on Instagram as well. But yeah, so these special editions here are the prettiest and the most expensive books that I've gotten this year. Question number 13, the last question, what books do you have to have read or do you hope to have read by the end of the year? So of course, TBR a mile long, there's always a TBR a mile long, but my priorities this year to get read by the end of the year are going to be Some Desperate Glory, which I mentioned before, A Genesis of Misery, which I bought like in the fall of last year and was all excited to read and still have not, so typical. He Who Drowned the World is a priority, and Threads of Power is a priority. Pretty much those 4 need to get done before the new year, but there's always more to read, right? This has been my New Year's Freakout Tag for 2023. I know I haven't been posting very much, and hopefully I'll get back into the groove of it again, but this is a little bit of what I've been reading this year and kind of where I'm at with my reading and my reading goals. Hope you guys are all having an awesome year. I hope you had a great Pride, and see you soon.